What's up, everybody? This is Mr. Toohey, creator of the TSI English Language Arts and Reading Crash Course. And in this video, we're going to go over some questions from the most recently released TSI Writing Practice test. The first half of the video, I'm going to go over every single grammar rule you need to know to succeed on this test. And later in the video, we'll practice actually answering the questions, applying the rules I'm teaching you. And if you like this video, you're going to want to access the full version of the course. Just click the link in the description of the video. Access the full course. It includes over 10 hours of instruction on the TSI English Language Arts and Reading section, including the reading test, the writing test, and that tricky essay you've been worrying about. So go ahead and click the link in the description below, access the full course, and best of luck on the TSI. All right, welcome everybody to TSI English Language Arts and Reading Crash Course. This is day 3, part 1. And we're changing gears a little bit today. We're going to focus on the TSI Writing section. I think that's what they're calling it now. It used to be the writing. They maybe call it the language arts section. I don't know. You're correcting sentences. You're correcting sentences is what you're doing, and fixing like bad writing. That's the idea. So you're not actually writing in the writing section. Ironically, you are going to write on the TSI. That's on the essay section. We cover that in day 5 of the course. But for day 3 and day 4, we're going to focus on this language arts writing section. And in order to do this, though, we've got to talk about grammar, which is something that most students probably have somehow escaped school learning anything about grammar. So I'm going to start with my rules for TSI writing. These are all the rules that you need to know in order to succeed on the TSI language arts writing section. Everything is here. Nothing you don't need to know, only things you need to know. And I've got, how many rules have I got here? I've got 8 rules. That's it. 8 rules you need to know. Now, there's some different elements, within those rules, but that's it. This is all you need to know. And if you know the rules and you can learn to apply them, we're going to cover them on a variety of question types, then you can do very, very well in this section. If you don't know the rules, you're just kind of guessing. And you're like, I guess that sentence sounds okay. I guess that sentence sounds okay. And by the way, that's not a terrible place to start if you don't know the rule, but if you know the rule, it's going to clarify everything and make this section really, really, really easy. Okay? We've got Francisco with us today. Say hi to everybody, Francisco.
Hello.
Thank you again, Francisco. Appreciate it. And so, Francisco, let's read together. Let's read over my rules. I think we were speaking a little bit earlier, and you said you weren't familiar with some of these grammar rules. That's fantastic, because I'm assuming most of the students watching this recording aren't familiar with a lot of these rules. So if you've got questions about anything, this is the time to clarify, okay? Don't feel like you need to memorize these rules exactly. The most important thing is that you understand them, and then you're going to sort of memorize them as you practice applying them on the questions. So right now we're just going for understanding. So if there's any questions you have at all, we're going to clear it all up right now, okay? So go ahead and read that first rule, rule number 1, punctuation. Read the rule I have for periods, please.
Break up 2 separate standalone statements.
Yeah, periods break up two separate standalone statements. Do you know what I mean by standalone statements, Francisco?
Like standalone statements.
Yeah.
Maybe like something that should start in a new sentence.
I mean, you're definitely going from one sentence to another sentence. You might have a period in between there. I mean, a standalone statement is just a complete thought. Or you could just say a complete sentence, right?
Okay.
And this is something, some students struggle with this a little bit. We may go over that. I've got a worksheet I may address here. Haven't decided yet. That just focuses on the difference between a complete sentence and a sentence fragment, which is just part of a sentence. But go ahead and read the correct example.
All right. I went to the store, period. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies.
Totally need to add another period there. Just realized, okay, fixed, done. By the way, if you see any edits, I just made this recently. If you see anything I need to change, feel free to point that out. But yeah, that we've got 2 complete, separate standalone statements there. I went to the store, right? That stands on its own. If I just said, even though I went to the store, right, that's not a standalone statement. Or after I went to the store. Okay, well, what about after you went to the store? What about even though you went to the store? You have to finish that thought, right? But if you just say, I went to the store, that stands alone. That's a complete thought that stands by itself. Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
Okay. And the same thing with the second part there. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies. It stands by itself. Okay. If I just said, everything I needed to bake cookies. Okay, well, what about everything you needed to bake cookies? What about it? Right? That wouldn't stand alone. But if you say, I bought everything I needed to bake cookies, that's a complete thought. Okay? So just ask yourself if that can stand alone, right? And if you have two statements that can stand on their own as complete thoughts, you can separate them with a period. That's it. Some students are really kind of familiar with this, and maybe some students are a little bit less familiar. We'll discuss sentence fragments coming up here in just a bit. But just be aware if two statements can stand on their own as complete sentences, you can separate them with a period. All right? Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about commas. Go ahead and read the comma rule, please.
Whenever you need a brief pause, should not be used to connect two standalone thoughts. There, a period or semicolon must be used.
Yeah, and this is kind of what they test you on most frequently, I think, on the TSI. They're not going to test you about like comma placement so much. I haven't seen much of that, but it's possible. Really, all you need to know about when to use a comma is just if you need a brief pause, use a comma. Wonderful. Okay, that's it. Go ahead and read the correct example there, by the way, of a good comma use.
I went to Kroger, the grocery store closest to my house.
Great. You need a little pause there after that word Kroger, right? Because you have a descriptive phrase that follows Kroger. I went to Kroger, the grocery store closest to my house. Okay. Quite often a descriptive phrase is going to be offset with commas, sometimes on both sides if it's in the middle of a sentence. But here this descriptive phrase kind of follows Kroger, and you really need a pause there. If you didn't have a pause there, it would sound weird. You'd say, I went to Kroger, the grocery store closest to my house. That's not good. You got to say, I went to Kroger, the grocery store closest to my house. A little brief pause. Okay? Does that make sense why you need a comma there?
Yeah.
It would sound really weird without it. Okay? But what I really expect them to test you on the TSI is the fact that you can't use a comma to separate two standalone thoughts, two standalone statements. Basically where you would need a period. You've got to have a period between standalone thoughts or a semicolon. We got the semicolon coming up here. We'll talk about it in just a minute. But you can't have a comma separating two standalone thoughts. Go ahead and read that incorrect example, please.
I went to the store. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies.
Okay, now that's interesting. That doesn't sound too bad if you take a long enough pause there after the word store. It doesn't sound too bad, does it?
Right.
But you've got to recognize those are two standalone thoughts. I went to the store. Remember, we put a period there in the previous period example. That stands on its own. I went to the store. Period. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies. Period. Two standalone thoughts. You can't separate them with a comma. It's not enough of a break between those two statements. It's not. And really, if you're reading it more accurately as a brief pause, which you should with a comma, you'd read it like this. I went to the store. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies. And that does sound weird if you take a brief pause, which is what a comma is supposed to be. And this is where it's really important when you're testing the answer choices that you read the answer choices as written. You've got to read a comma as a brief pause. You can't read it as a period. Because if you read it as a period, that incorrect example may sound okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you take a definitive pause, a longer pause after the sentence, I went to the store. If you take a long pause instead of the brief pause, like the comma suggests you should, it could sound okay. And that's why you can't just kind of go with what sounds good on this test. We were talking about that earlier, right? Even though that's great. Well, I mean, again, if you don't know where to go, that's a great place to start. If you don't know the rule. But if you see commas kind of going on in the sentence and some different punctuation, in the answer choices, they could be testing you on the comma rule, and you need to look out for two standalone thoughts separated by a comma. And if you find that, you got to get rid of it as an answer choice. It's not acceptable. Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
Okay, great. And again, we're gonna see questions like this, here in day 3 and day 4, as we kind of go through these grammar questions. So, go ahead and read the rule on semicolons, please.
Right. Semicolons connect two related statements that could still stand on their own as complete sentences.
Okay. Go and read that correct example.
I went to the store, semicolon. I bought everything I needed to bake cookies.
Great. Notice a semicolon is a lot like a period because they're both for connecting standalone statements or separating standalone statements. Okay? If you have two standalone statements, you can put a period there. You can also put a semicolon there for standalone thoughts. two standalone thoughts. Okay. Now, why would the author use a semicolon? Because you never really have to use a semicolon, right? If it's for standalone thoughts, I'm just going to use a period, man, right? That's fine. You can. You never have to use a semicolon. But sometimes an author wants to highlight the relationship between two standalone thoughts, and that's when you use a semicolon to highlight the relationship between two standalone thoughts. It's a slightly less definitive break than a period, but it's still for standalone thoughts. It's like, yeah, hey, these two ideas are related. That's kind of what the author's saying there. These two standalone thoughts are related. Does that make some sense?
Yes.
Okay, and now you know what a semicolon's used for. You never have to use it in your own writing, at least. I mean, I'm not saying it won't be a correct answer choice. Sometimes it is. But they're easy to test, Francisco. They're very, very easy to test because all you got to do is just check to see if you have two standalone thoughts. Read the half of the, before the semicolon, I went to the store. Is that standalone? Yes. Read the second half. I bought everything I need to bake cookies. Does that stand alone? Yes. If you've got two standalone thoughts separated by a semicolon, that's acceptable use. If one of those parts doesn't stand on its own, the part before or the part after, you can't use the semicolon. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Any questions before we move on?
No.
That's it. That's all you need to know for punctuation, man. That's it. That's not bad. Right? Some other tests get a lot more complicated. SAT gets a lot more complicated, and ACT gets a lot more complicated. You just need periods, commas, and semicolons. Is all you need for the TSI. Go ahead and read rule number 2. Avoid sentence fragments.
Avoid sentence fragments. Statements that cannot stand on their own as complete sentences.
Yeah, read the incorrect example first.
Because I went to the store.
Ooh,
period.
That's no good. Do you see what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what about because you went to the store? Okay, because I went to the store. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me the rest. Finish that. Read the second incorrect example.
Having bought everything I needed to bake cookies.
Okay. What about that? Yeah. Right? You could say, having bought everything I need to bake cookies, I got started in the kitchen right away. Okay, great. That stands alone. That's fine. You're finishing that statement. But in that second incorrect example, you're kind of like setting up a situation that you never complete. Okay. All right, you having bought everything I need to bake cookies, then what? Doesn't stand alone. Any questions about that? No? Okay. If anybody needs extra help with sentence fragments and stuff like that, I've got a worksheet I'm going to link here. And I use this with a lot of students that struggle with standalone thoughts. I'm going to bring this up real quick. In fact, I want to talk about these a little bit. You've got access to that worksheet. I just want to talk about a couple of them real quick and kind of go over how this works. But this is a good worksheet. It's got an answer key there at the end if you want to work through these. We just don't have time to go over everything right now. I think the answer key is sort of here at the end. But I want to go through a couple of these examples right off the bat. And these are statements here. Some of these are sentences in the directions they ask you to write an S for sentence and then an F for fragment if it's a fragment. Do you have that worksheet in front of you?
Yeah. The what is it? The Texas and
it says sentence structure, identifying sentences, and sentence fragments. I think I sent you.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Yeah, and the first sentence is taking a canoe trip in Canada. Do you see that up there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Read that statement for me because I don't know if it's a sentence or not. You're going to tell me.
Yeah. Taking a canoe trip in Canada.
Okay, is that a standalone thought or not?
No.
No. That's like. Okay, well, what about taking a canoe trip in Canada? Interestingly, there's no verb there. There's no verb, right? A sentence has to have a subject and a verb at the very least. You might be like, what about taking? Taking is not a verb. Taking's a form. It's called a gerund. Don't worry about that. But, it's not, to take is a verb, right? I took a canoe trip. Okay, that's fine. That's a sentence. I took a canoe trip. Right. I will take a canoe trip. I am taking a canoe trip. Well, there, am is the verb. But just taking a canoe trip in Canada. What about taking a canoe trip in Canada? That's like a subject. Go ahead and read the second example there.
Sufficient food for a week's journey.
Is that a sentence or a fragment? You can read it again if you need to. Just ask yourself if it stands alone.
Sufficient food for a week's journey. Sufficient means like important or like
Means enough.
Enough food. Yeah.
Yeah.
So enough food for a week's journey. Yeah, I think that's a fragment.
It's definitely a fragment. Once again, there's no verb in there. Right? If you said, I took enough food for a week's journey, okay, that's fine. You got a subject I and a verb took, and then something you took. I took food. Even that's a sentence. I took food. That's fine. I ate food. That's a sentence. It's a complete thought. But if you just say, sufficient food for a week's journey, enough food for a week's journey, well, what about it? You're not saying much. What about the third one?
Others had camped there before us. I think, yeah, that's a sentence.
That's a sentence. That stands alone. Yeah. You got the subject, others. You got a verb, had camped. Past tense. Yeah. That stands alone. What about number 4?
Ashes indicated the place. Mm. Ashes indicated the place.
Let's see if you got a subject and a verb.
Ashes indicated the place.
Does that stand
I
alone?
think.
Go with your gut here. Go with your gut. Does that stand alone?
Ashes. I'm going to say, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. Ashes is your subject. And they're doing, so the ashes are doing something. The ashes indicated, which like pointed to the place. Pointed out the place. That stands alone. What about number 5?
Where their fire had been.
Does that stand alone?
No, it's a fragment.
That's a fragment. Doesn't stand alone. Where their fire had been. Well, what about where their fire had been? If you said, I went to the place where their fire had been, that's fine. Right? I went to the place where their fire had been. But if you say, where their fire had been, well, what about where their fire had been? It doesn't stand alone. Anyway, check this out. There's, again, the answer keys there sort of at the end if you need practice with this. Some students do. Some students do. But with a little bit of practice, you can start to identify what's a sentence and what's a fragment. And you got to know it because they like testing on that. All right. Any questions about sentence fragments at the moment?
No.
All right. Let's go to rule number 3. Keep it simple. Go ahead and read that first bullet point, please.
All right. Whenever possible, say it with fewer words.
Okay, and then read the incorrect example there.
The ice begins thawing in late summer, and such thawing follows several weeks of higher temperatures.
Okay. And that doesn't, look, there's nothing like terrible there. But let's see if we can say it with fewer words. Go ahead and read the correct example.
The ice begins thawing in late summer, following several weeks of higher temperatures.
All right. Do you see the difference between the correct version and the incorrect version there?
Yeah, the correct version just sounds better.
It sounds better. You're right. Notice it's shorter. There's just some extra words in the incorrect version. They say, and such thawing follows several weeks of higher temperatures. And there's just nothing added by saying that. We know you're already talking about the thawing and when it's happening. You don't need to repeat that. If you can say it with fewer words, go with it. Right? I mean, as long as it makes sense. And this is a little tricky for some students. Some students get very, very overly impressed by complicated sentence structure. Because a lot of academic writing has really long sentences and just tons of complicated grammar. Don't be impressed by a bunch of extra words. Don't be impressed by it. Quite often the correct answer choice is the simplest. That's good writing. Good writing is clear. Good writing doesn't have a bunch of extra repetitive stuff. You know what I'm saying, Francisco?
Yes.
So don't be impressed by fancy, long, complicated sentences. If you read a sentence, you're like, boy, that was really confusing. I don't know what's going on there. You know, there's a good chance that's not right. Don't be like, I have no idea what that was saying. That must be the right answer. That's how a lot of students think about it. They're like, that's so complicated. That's got to be right. No. You want the one that's really clear and straightforward. On this section, you do. And honestly, in just writing in general. The better I am at writing, the shorter my sentences are, honestly. Much shorter. I used to be like, boy, my commas everywhere, long sentences. No. And that's how a lot of textbooks are, I know. It's super annoying. But don't be impressed by complicated grammar. If it's short and simple and clear, that's the answer choice you'll want. Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead and read that second bullet point, please.
When combining sentences, avoid answer choices with more than one subject.
Go ahead and read that incorrect example for me, please.
The polar bear is a carnivorous animal or mammal, and the Arctic Circle is where its habitat is.
Yeah. Hey, Francisco, can you do me a favor? Turn off your video. I think that's going to help the connection a little bit. The audio is just a little bit.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Don't worry about the carnivorous. Just means it eats meat. There. Don't worry about that. But do you see there's two subjects in there, and I underlined them. Right. The polar bear and the Arctic Circle. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like, is that, am I breaking the rule there by you having two subjects? Not necessarily. It's just bad style. Because when you've got more than one subject going on in a sentence, it's just kind of confusing what's going on or who's doing what. And you'll know they're testing on this because they'll say, like, which of the following answer choices best combines these two sentences. They'll point blank say which best combines these. And you'll see 3 incorrect answer choices with, like, multiple subjects, like you have here in the incorrect example. Right? You've got the polar bear doing something. The polar bear is a carnivorous mammal, and then the other subject is, and the Arctic Circle is where its habitat is. 2 subjects, and really 2 corresponding verbs. It's a little bit confusing. Read the correct example. It's better.
The polar bear is a carnivorous mammal whose habitat is the Arctic Circle.
All right. Do you see how that's a little bit easier to understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's shorter as well, which is nice. But you just want one subject. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't have different nouns. I mean, the Arctic Circle is a noun here, but it's not another subject that's doing something, like in the first example. You see the difference?
Yes.
Yeah. You just have that descriptive phrase, whose habitat is the Arctic Circle, but that's describing the polar bear. Or maybe it's describing the carnivorous mammal, but whatever, same thing. It's not another subject. Okay? So, anyway, when they're testing you on combining sentences, just look out for sentences that are longer that have multiple subjects. You want to avoid that. Go with the simple one that has just one subject. And then this is a funny rule that I totally had to make just because I've been going over TSI questions. I saw this pop up on so many questions. It's super specific, but I want you to avoid this trap here, potentially, on questions. Go ahead and read that third bullet point, please.
Is it avoid answer choices?
Yep.
Avoid answer choices with the word being unnecessarily thrown in.
Yeah, read the incorrect example.
I went to the store being that I wanted to buy bread and milk.
First of all, Francisco, how does that sentence sound? You cut out just a little bit. How's it sound to you?
Doesn't sound right.
Doesn't sound right. Right? It doesn't sound right. And it's long, and it's kind of, that being that should sound weird. It is. It is. I see that word being pop up a lot on incorrect answer choices on the TSI. Adding unnecessary complexity. I'm not saying it won't be right, because be very suspicious of it. If it's totally unnecessary and there's like a simpler answer choice that doesn't have that extra, like, being that this is the case. I haven't seen one yet be a correct answer choice, so I'd be extremely suspicious of it. Read the correct version.
I went to the store to buy bread and milk.
There you go. Right? You don't need to say, I went to the store being that I wanted to buy bread and milk. Just say, I went to the store to buy bread and milk. It's short. It's simple. It works. That's what you want. Yeah. Keep it simple. Any questions about keep it simple?
No.
It's the opposite of what a lot of students want to do. A lot of students think like, oh, good writing, like in textbooks, there's long sentences and everything's really complicated. No. You want short and sweet, direct, clear writing is good writing. All right, read rule number 4, transition words, please.
For transition word questions, identify the 2 separate ideas being connected. Identify the relationship between the 2 ideas and choose the corresponding transition word.
Okay, now this is a little bit tricky here. This is involved. I'm going to have to explain this. So you'll know you're being tested on a transition word question if you see words like, in the answer choice, like, furthermore, however, nevertheless. afterward. I'm looking at some of the others here. Therefore, consequently, as a result. Like the idea is you've got two ideas that are being connected in some way. You're transitioning from one idea to another idea. And there's a relationship between those ideas. Okay? A transition word, there's some other fancy names for it. I forget what it was, like a coordinating conjunction or something. I'm not worried about that. I call them transition words because you're transitioning from one idea to the next. And once you understand the relationship between the two ideas, then you know exactly the transition word you need to use. Because certain relationships have certain kinds of transition words. I think it'll be pretty clear once we go over some examples here in just a moment. Read the example here. I kind of put a question type here for the example of the kind of transition word question you might see. Go ahead and read that example. Then you can just read the blank as blank.
I normally get good grades this semester. I failed my chemistry class.
Ooh, okay. So here are the two ideas being connected. Let me make this really, really clear. The first idea is I normally get good grades. I normally get good grades. Okay? Then the next idea is this semester I failed my chemistry class. Interesting, right? Do you see the relationship between those two ideas, by the way? Like, normally this happens, but in this case, this happened. You see that? That's what I would call a contrast relationship. Two contrasting ideas. There's something like unusual or surprising about those two ideas being next to each other. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Do you see why it's unusual or surprising? I normally get good grades. This semester I failed my chemistry class. No, there's almost like it's like opposite ideas. That's why I call it contrast. Here's the 5 relationships. I'm going to go over these real briefly. We'll study them in more detail here in just a minute. But the 5 main relationships are similarity, contrast, cause and effect. That is the first thing causing the second thing. Providing examples, and then sequence. Okay, I'll go over all that here in just a minute. But let's see if we can figure out the right answer here together. What word do you think, let's plug them in right now and see what do you think makes most sense and really clarifies that contrast relationship.
I think...
Well, go ahead, I want to hear you plug them all in. I want to hear them all. Start with answer choice A.
Although I normally get good grades, this semester I failed my chemistry class.
How's that sound?
I like it.
It sounds good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that works. I mean, although is a contrast transition word, right? Although this happened, right? Although this was the case. Although I eat ice cream every night, I'm still losing weight, right? Those are contrasting ideas, right? You wouldn't expect somebody eating ice cream every night to lose weight, right? So if there's something surprising or unusual or contrasting, right, between two ideas, use a contrast transition word like although. Plug in answer choice B. Let me hear it.
Because I normally get good grades, this semester I failed my chemistry class.
How does that sound?
Terrible.
It sounds awful, right? It doesn't make any sense. Because implies a cause and effect relationship. Again, we'll look at these each relationship more closely in just a minute. But because implies a cause and effect relationship, the first thing causing the second thing. But in this case, if you normally get good grades, that doesn't cause you to fail your chemistry class, right? That's why it doesn't make any sense.
The exact opposite.
It's the opposite, right? Yeah. If you said, now you could say, because I normally get good grades, I passed all my classes this semester. Okay, that's fine. All right, that's fine. Maybe something along those lines. I don't know if this is exactly cause and effect, but that'd be better than plugged in here in the sentence. Try answer choice C, after.
After I normally get good grades, this semester I failed my chemistry class.
How's that sound? No. After, that would be like a sequence relationship, right? Like this happened after this thing happened, right? We're talking about time order, the order in which things happen. So that's no good. Try D.
Also, I normally get good grades. This semester I failed my chemistry class.
How's that sound?
Like with the sentence alone, no.
No, it's not good. It's not good. Also would be for similarity. Right.
Yeah.
I love eating ice cream. Also, I love eating brownies. Those are two things I love to eat. That's a similarity relationship. Okay. And that's why it doesn't work there. You don't have two similar ideas. You've got two contrasting ideas in this example. So you got to have a contrast transition word like although. Okay. Now, I explained the 5 major word relationships here, transition word relationships. And I've got some of the most common examples. This is not an exhaustive list. I want you to be aware of that. You may see some others, but once you kind of get the idea, I think you can figure out what relationship each word signifies. Look at similarity transition words. Similarity transition words include furthermore, likewise, moreover, also, and. Okay? Those would indicate a similarity relationship. That example I gave with the brownies and the ice cream, right? Any of those words I could plug in there really for instead of also, right? I love eating ice cream. Furthermore, I love eating chocolate chip cookies or brownies, right? Even more so, right? I love eating ice cream. Likewise, I love eating chocolate chip cookies. I love eating ice cream. Moreover, I like eating chocolate chip cookies. I love eating ice cream. Also, I love eating chocolate chip cookies. Right? Or in one sentence, I could say, I love eating ice cream and I love eating chocolate chip cookies. But because it's they've got a similarity, you should be able to identify what the similarity is. Oh, there's the example. We'll go and read the example. There you go.
The example for
similarity. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I like eating cookies. Also, I like eating ice cream.
Great. There you go. Right. Literally any one of those other similarity transition words you could plug in there and it would make sense. Because you have a similarity relationship between the two ideas. There's something they have in common. They're things I like eating. Does that make sense why that's a similarity relationship?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Go ahead and read the contrast transition words. Common contrast transition words.
Although, however, nevertheless, but, despite.
Okay, and then read the example.
I eat healthy food every day. However, I can't seem to lose weight.
Ooh, do you see why those are two contrasting ideas there?
I eat healthy. Yeah, I see it.
You're eating healthy food every day. You'd think you'd be losing weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You would think. But apparently this dude is eating, apparently me, said I, but eating healthy food every day. But I can't seem to lose weight. It's surprising or unusual if you're eating healthy food every day and trying to lose weight, right? So use a contrast transition word. For the other transition words, you might have to, for the other contrast transition words, you might have to rearrange the sentence a little bit differently. You could say, I eat healthy food every day. Despite this, I can't seem to lose weight. Okay, that'd be fine. Or if it were one sentence, you could say, I eat healthy food every day, comma, but I can't seem to lose weight. That would work fine. Nevertheless would work in there as well in place of however. You could start the sentence with although. You could say, although I eat healthy food every day, I can't seem to lose weight. So you might have to structure it a little bit differently. They're not completely interchangeable, but the idea is the same, which is that you've got two contrasting ideas being connected. You got to use a contrast transition word. Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's look at cause and effect. And by the way, this is one of the more complicated rules. Don't freak out about this. I don't see this tested a lot. I do see it tested, though. So we want to be aware of it. Go ahead and read the cause and effect transition words.
Because, therefore, thus, so, consequently, as a result.
Okay. Now when we say cause and effect, here's the thing. There's the first thing. The first idea is basically causing the second thing. Okay? Read the example.
Because I got a bad case of the flu, I was not able to attend class.
Okay. The first thing, I got a bad case of the flu, causes the second thing. Do you see why that's a cause and effect relationship?
Yes.
Yeah. If you're using some of the other transition words in the sentence, you might have to structure it differently. You could say, I got a bad case of the flu, period, therefore, comma, I was not able to attend class. Or consequently, I was not able to attend class. You might have to structure it a little bit differently.
Right.
With the others. You couldn't just plug in consequently in place of because there. But the important idea is understanding the relationship. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Providing examples. All right, so with providing examples, basically the first idea is a general category, and then the second idea is examples of that general category. So providing example transition words or phrases in this case would be for example, for instance, or in fact, right? Go ahead and read the example.
I love playing sports. For example, I play football, basketball, tennis, and soccer.
Great. Do you see the first idea? I love playing sports. That's a general category or a general idea. And then the second idea, second sentence is Examples of that general category. Sports I love to play. Any of those others you could plug in. I love playing sports. For instance, I play football, basketball, tennis, and soccer. I love playing sports. In fact, I play football, basketball, tennis, and soccer. Those are all provided examples, transition words, or phrases. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Sequence is pretty easy. Sequence transition words depends on the relationship exactly. It could be different sequential relationships, but before, after, then, later, right? Or just some examples. Read the example, please.
I bought everything I needed to bake cookies. Then I baked them.
Yeah, right. And that would be the order. You're not baking the cookies first and then buying everything you need, right? You buy everything you need, and then afterwards, I baked cookies. Okay. If it happens before, you can use before. Before I baked cookies, I bought everything I needed to bake them. Any questions about those major transition relationships?
No, everything looks good.
Okay. And when you're practicing these questions on your own, I recommend referencing this if you need to. If it's a transition word question. And again, if you see any of those, furthermore, likewise, moreover, because, however, nevertheless, but, despite, for example, for instance, if you see all those consequently, you see those transition words popping up, they're testing you on this rule. What you got to do, you got to find the two ideas being connected. Generally, it's pretty straightforward. And then identify the relationship between the two ideas, whether it be similarity, contrast, cause and effect, provide examples, or sequence. And then once you know the relationship, you know the right word to pick. And that's it. Okay, and we'll practice that. Let's go to rule number 5, make it match. This is a big rule too. Okay, this is maybe one of the most commonly tested rules on the TSI writing section. And there's some different elements to it, but all the elements have this in common, which is that you've got to make one part of the sentence or paragraph match another part of the sentence or paragraph. That's it. Okay? So it depends on the things that you need to match, but you gotta make one part of the sentence or paragraph match another part of the sentence or paragraph. Let's start with pronouns. Do you know what a pronoun is, by the way? Have you heard that before? It's like it, he, she, I, you, them, they.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Like it references like people or things. And it could also be a possessive pronoun like her or his or yours. I haven't seen that tested a whole lot, but possible. But those are all examples of pronouns. Go ahead and read that first rule on pronouns.
Refers to a person or thing being mentioned elsewhere in the sentence or passage. Make sure you use a singular pronoun like it when referring to a singular subject, and a plural pronoun like they when referring to a plural subject.
Yeah, do you know what I mean when I say plural?
Like more than one?
More than one, yeah. Yeah. But if it's just one thing, you could use it to refer to the thing, right? I mowed my lawn today. It was really overgrown. it was really bad. Referring to my lawn, that's one thing. I use it. But if I'm referring to multiple things, I could say like, my kids really got on my nerves today. They were out of control. Okay. Actually, they were really good today. Maybe yesterday I could have said that. But anyway, if you're talking about multiple people, you got to say they or them. You see the difference there?
Yeah.
Okay. Read the example here, and then we're going to do the same thing we did with the other ones. We're going to plug these in, but read the blank as a blank right now.
All right. If blank exercise regularly, your health will improve significantly.
Ooh, so you got to find the right pronoun here. Now, what's interesting here is they actually have a possessive pronoun here in the sentence already. Do you see the other pronoun in the sentence already? Do you see it?
Yeah.
What pronoun?
You.
Yeah, or your, right?
Yeah.
As in your health. It's a possessive pronoun. Possessive if there's somebody in possession of something. In this case, the author is referring to you, the reader, saying you. Which, by the way, is tricky. And I see this on the TSI. It's worth pointing out. A lot of students think like, never say you in an essay, right? I think we talked about that in the essay section that we've worked on together already, actually. I know it's day 5, but whatever. I recorded that first. Deal with it, everybody. But we were going to talk about. You're going to see that in day. Actually, we discussed that in the essay section. You had a question. You're like, "Hey, can I say I believe this is the case?" Right? You remember discussing it?
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing, I found it later. You can totally do that. Like I saw some essay examples where there's no problem at all. At least on the TSI. Your teacher may not like it. If your teacher tells you not to do it, great, don't do it. That's fine. But I'm letting you on the TSI. You may say an author refer to you or your, or say I. They do it all the time. So don't worry about that. Okay? Anyway, we know. So they refer to you already, or your health. What's the right answer here, Francisco? You don't even have to plug them in.
Yeah, D.
It's D. You got to make it match. They're referring to you. Don't be like, I thought I was never supposed to say you. They're doing it in the sentence. There's no question about whether you can do it or not. The question is, what pronoun do we need to use? They're referring to you in the sentence. You better say you. Plug it in. I want to hear it.
If you exercise regularly, your health will improve significantly.
Great. I mean, try the other ones. They sound awful.
If one exercise regularly, your health will improve significantly.
No. Try the next. This hurts, but try it.
if they exercise regularly, your health will improve significantly.
No. Think of the next one.
If she exercises regularly, your health will improve.
Oh, it hurts me so much.
They don't even say exercise, right? Like, it should be let's just say she should be there. Like, it should say if she exercises regularly.
Yes. Also, yeah, that would be an issue. You're absolutely right. And well, which takes us that's a great transition, great segue into the next part of Make It Match, which is Subject-Verb Agreement. So let's talk about that. Go ahead and read that rule on Subject-Verb Agreement. By the way, here we're just talking about, like, if you have a singular subject, you need a singular verb, and if you have a plural subject, you need a plural verb. You got to make that match. Read the rule.
Find the subject of the sentence, identify if the subject is singular or plural, and pick the matching singular or plural verb in the answer choices.
Okay. Great. Go ahead and read the example as it is. You can just read the blank as a blank.
The children that I babysit blank a lot of junk food.
Ooh, okay. What's the subject here in the sentence?
That the children eat a lot of junk food.
Well, the subject is going to be like a word or phrase. I mean, pretty much. Yeah, it could be a phrase, but in this case, it's a word. Right?
The children. Right?
Yeah, the children. Right. They're the people or thing doing the thing here. It's the children. Okay. Yeah. You might be like, well, what about I? It's like, well, there's the descriptive phrase that I babysit, which is describing the children. Right. It's the children that I babysit. You could say that's the subject. The children that I babysit is the subject. That's fine. Or just the children. Regardless, the question is, okay, so we've got the subject. Is the subject singular or plural, Francisco?
It's plural.
It's plural. The children, multiple children, more than one. If it's more than one, it's plural. So we need a plural verb here. Okay? Now you might be like, oh crap, which one's plural? Right? Which one's plural? It's not obvious. Do you think you know which one's plural, by the way?
I think so, yeah.
What do you think the right answer is?
A.
You might think so. I'm so glad you said A. But it's wrong.
Okay.
It's wrong. You might be like, but there's an S at the end. That's plural. No. No. That's for nouns, man. Not for verbs. Not for verbs. In fact, many singular verbs end in S. Many. It flies. It swims. It jumps. It plays. It dives. It spins. Right? Those are singular verbs because I used it in front of it. So here's the trick to find out if a verb is singular or plural. Here's the trick. You ready? If you need a singular verb, test the answer choices with the word it. Like plug in it before the verb, and if it works, okay, it's singular. But if you need plural, like we need here, we'll plug in a plural pronoun like they in front of the verb. Does that make some sense?
Like
Like, you'll say, they eats to test answer choice A.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Can you say they eats, Francisco? Can you say that?
No.
No. Let's try it in answer choice B. Can you say they eat?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can. That works. That sounds good. Okay, great. We'll keep B. What about C? Can you say they has eaten?
No.
No.
You can say they had eaten, but not has eaten.
Exactly. Because A and C are singular. What about D? They eating? No. Again, that's not even a verb. It's derived from a verb, but it's not actually a verb itself. They throw those in sometimes too.
Yeah.
So the only singular verb here, or the only plural verb here, is answer choice B. Plug it in. I want to hear it. Answer choice B.
The children that I babysit eat a lot of junk food.
How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Try A and C, though. They sound weird.
The children that I babysit eats a lot of junk food.
How's that sound?
Eat sounds better.
Eat sounds better, yeah. Try C. I want to hear that.
The children that I babysit has eaten a lot of junk food.
How's that?
Well, I mean, the way it sounds. I mean, it sounds okay to me. But like,
and that's interesting, right? That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
why you can't just rely on like how it sounds, because sometimes incorrect answer choices might sound okay to you. They might. It generally doesn't work the other way around though. But like if you read an answer choice and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's awful!" Like, "Oh, my ears are bleeding. That's so bad." You can get rid of it. You can get rid of it. If it sounds awful, you can get rid of it. But sometimes you'll read an incorrect answer choice and you're like, "Sounds okay." You gotta know the rules. It can't be C. C is singular. And if you needed a singular here, then just again plug in it in front of the verbs. Can you say it eats, Francisco?
Wow.
Can you say it
Yeah,
eats?
yeah,
You can. It eats a lot of food. My dog, it eats a lot of food. Yeah, you can say that because it's singular. Can you say it eat?
No.
No. No. My dog, it eat a lot of food. No, you can't. Unless you're going like full caveman. It eat food. Eat food. No. No offense to cavemen. Sorry. Any cavemen watching this recording. Practicing for the TSI. Anyway. It has eaten. Can you say that?
Yeah.
It has eaten? Yeah. Yeah, you can say that. Because it's singular. And then it eating. Again, eating's not even a verb. But eating is really a thing, right? You could say eating is my favorite activity. But anyway. Okay. But that's it. So find the subject, in this case children. Find out if the subject is singular or plural. In this case it was plural. And then find the corresponding answer choice. If you need a plural, just test the answer choice with they. Or if you need a singular, you could test it with it. That's it. Or, if you need to, you could also plug in children. Can you say children eats?
Children eats. Children eats.
Children eats. The children eats their food. No. Eat? Can you say children eat?
Yeah, children eat.
Yeah. Children has eaten? No. Children eating. No. All right. And then here I explain what I in more explicitly what I just described in the next part of the rule. Go ahead and read the rest of that rule. What identifying?
Okay. When identifying whether a verb is plural, test the verb with the singular pronoun they. You can say they eat, but you can't say they eats or they has eaten. You also can't say they eating.
Okay. And then the next part.
When identifying a singular verb, test the verb with the singular pronoun it. You can say it eats or it has eaten, but you can't say it eat.
Yep. You can't. Any questions about that?
No.
All right. And again, we'll practice these. They don't pop up a ton, but they pop up. So we got to be familiar with it. Going to the last part of make it match. This is make it match tense. Here we're talking about verb tense, like if it's present tense or future tense or past tense. So go ahead and read the rule, please.
If events are happening in the present, use the present tense. If events happen in the past, use the past tense. If they will happen in the future, use the future tense.
Okay, and that's it. This doesn't mean, by the way, you can't have different tenses in the same sentence. You can. It's just a question of when are the events happening. If we're talking about events that happen in the past tense, just stay in the past tense. That's it. Read the correct example here.
The band played its hit tune, and the audience erupted in applause.
Is it clear we're talking about events that happened in the past?
Yeah.
Because they played its hit tune. You wouldn't say, the band played its hit tune, and the audience will erupt in applause. I don't think that doesn't make a lot of sense. Certainly if they've already erupted in applause. So you got to make the tenses match, at least when the events are happening. So consider that. Any questions about that? I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. All right, rule number 6. This is a funny rule. It's one of my favorites. They don't test. They tested a healthy amount, actually. I take that back. It's tough to catch, though. It's tough to catch. Go ahead and read rule number 6. Avoid misplaced modifiers. It's a fancy phrase for a not too fancy idea. Do you know what a modifying phrase is, by the way?
Like, I don't want to say improved.
Maybe.
But...
Maybe. I describe it as a descriptive phrase, right? You're describing something in the sentence with a phrase. Sometimes called a modifying phrase. Okay. Oh, you're talking about think of like a modified car or something like that. Is that what you're thinking of? Yeah. I got you. Yeah, I mean, it's related to that, right? To modify means to change something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, you're changing something in the sense maybe with a description. That's kind of where it comes from. So a misplaced modifier is basically, it's a descriptive phrase that's in the wrong part of the sentence if you have a misplaced modifier or misplaced modifying phrase. Go and read that first bullet point for me on Rule 6.
A modifying descriptive phrase must always come immediately before or immediately after the word it is modifying.
Okay, and that's the key, right? If you're describing something in the sentence, that description, that modifying phrase has to come immediately before or immediately after the word it's modifying. Read the incorrect example. So this is in the wrong place. Go ahead and read it.
Blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time, humans have long been fascinated by comets.
So I've underlined the modifying phrase there, the descriptive phrase. Blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time. Right? Something is blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time. Okay. According to the incorrect version of the sentence, what is blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time?
The comet?
I mean, that's what the author's trying to say clearly. And it's funny because a lot of students might read that sentence and be like, I don't see anything wrong with that. That sounds good to me. But remember, the modifying phrase has to come immediately before or immediately after. In this case, it's coming before the word it's modifying. It's modifying. It's describing humans. The sentence structure in the incorrect example is suggesting that humans are blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time. Do you see that, Francisco? And then our brains are awesome because we can fill in a lot of gaps and just kind of fix things automatically. You know what I'm talking about if you ever tried to correct your own work and there's a bunch of mistakes you just didn't catch.
Right.
So some students might read this and not see a problem. I get that. But when you see a descriptive phrase like this, blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time, whatever follows that needs to be the thing that's blazing through the night sky. And humans doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not aware of any way for humans to blaze through the night sky, at least legally, to blaze through the night sky. I'll let you interpret that as you will. But I don't think, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense that humans are blazing through the night sky. It's supposed to be the comets, right?
Yeah.
Read the correct example. I think it's going to make more sense when you read the correct example.
Blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time, comets have long fascinated humans.
There we go. Does that sound better to you at all, or maybe you don't notice the difference still?
No, I get it, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Even now, this is right, because we got the descriptive phrase coming right before the thing that's being described. That makes sense, right? Put your description next to the thing you're trying to describe. Come on. I mean, that's really another way to phrase this rule, and maybe I should. I don't know. I like the phrase misplaced modifiers. Maybe I'm too attached to that. Maybe I should call it. Put your descriptive phrase next to the thing it's describing. That might be better. That might be better. Feel free to scratch that out on your own, or you modify the document as you watch the recording. I mean, that might be better. I'm considering it right now, but
Yeah.
but another way, that incorrect example here, another way to fix that, you could put the descriptive phrase after comments. So you could say, humans have long been fascinated by comets, comma, blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time. That would work too. But still, in that case, you've got the descriptive phrase right next to the thing being described, the comments. Just as you have in the correct example here. Does that make some sense?
Sorry, say that one more time?
Yeah, I said you could the incorrect example, you could fix that by placing the descriptive phrase after the word comets.
Like
you could say humans have long been fascinated by comets, comma, blazing through the night sky for brief periods of time.
Oh, okay, I got
Right?
you.
That would work. But again, in that example, you've got the descriptive phrase right next to the word being described, which is the issue. Your descriptive phrase needs to be next to the thing being described. Just has to.
Well, wait, you said it has to be next to?
Yep.
thing
The
being
descriptive
described?
phrase has to be next to the thing being described. It's got to come immediately before or immediately after the word.
I mean, the way you said it, like, comets blazing through the
Yeah.
night. I mean, that sounds right, yeah.
And it is. It is. I'm saying that's another option. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's another option.
All right.
All right. Let's go to rule number 7, logical order. Ooh, these are tricky questions here. Go ahead and read the bullet point, please.
Avoid interrupting the flow of thought in a paragraph.
And then read just make sure the ideas flow from one to the next without interruption. Go ahead and read the incorrect example.
The bear population in Alaska has grown by 15% in the past decade. There is an abundance of other fish and wildlife in Alaska. The exact reason for the increase in bear populations is currently unknown.
Do you see what's wrong with that, by the way?
Oh, the bear population in Alaska. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really see anything.
Yeah. So I've underlined a sentence that's really interrupting the flow of thought there.
Well, I see it says other fish when it was just talking about bears.
Yeah. So the first sentence is like we're talking about bears and the bear population, and then the second sentence we're talking about other fish and wildlife.
Yeah.
But then we go back to bears after that. And it's like, and you can change the subject, that's fine, but like, finish the discussion about bears. Don't be like bears, then another thing, and back to bears.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Those ideas just don't flow from one to the next. That underlined sentence needs to be somewhere else in the sentence. I don't know where, but not there.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're discussing the increase in the bear populations in the first sentence, and the third sentence just doesn't, the second sentence in the middle has nothing to do with it. So when you're testing sentence placement, and they'll say, like, this sentence belongs where in the paragraph, and they give you a paragraph, you got to plug it in. You're going to use a method I call the sentence sandwich method. Don't freak out if you don't understand this right now. I'm tempted to even just skip over this and go over this when we see a question. But basically, you're going to, in fact, I'm not going to spend time on it right now. When they're testing you on the placement of a sentence in a paragraph, you'll use this method. You're going to plug it into the paragraph, but you're going to read 3 sentences. You're going to read the sentence before the sentence in question, and then you're going to read the sentence in question, and then you're going to read the sentence after the sentence in question. 3 in a row. To make sure that the ideas flow from one to the next to the next.
Right.
Did that sentence sandwich method make any sense on a superficial level at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. And if you're watching the recording, you're like, I have no idea what he just was talking about. Don't worry, because we'll go over it with an actual question. It'll make a whole lot more sense when we practice it. So I just want to introduce it here. We will practice it, and you will understand it, because we're going to do it a lot in later questions. We're almost done here. One more rule, and this one's easy. Go ahead and read rule number 8. Trust your ear and trust your instincts.
Yeah. You may not always know the exact rule that applies. Furthermore, there are a number of conventions of good writing that don't fit into perfect categories.
Yeah, when I say conventions of good writing, it's just like ways that things are traditionally phrased in English. That's all that means.
Okay.
Okay.
So when in doubt, trust your ear and go with your first instinct. You may be wrong some of the time, but it is always your best bet.
Yeah, this is especially when you can't identify the rule. You're like, oh, I don't know what they're testing me on here, but like these two answer choices sound terrible. Get rid of them. Get rid of them if they sound bad. Very rarely, I'm not sure ever, is the right answer choice going to sound really bad. Sometimes the wrong ones sound okay. But if it sounds bad, get rid of it. And then if you're torn between two answer choices, just go with your first instinct. Your gut knows things your brain doesn't know. Your gut knows things your brain doesn't know. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. And like sometimes you can like convince yourself that the wrong answer choice is right if you read it enough or something like that, or you know. But like sometimes you're just good. Go with your practice listening to your instincts. Listen to your gut. If you're not sure, and you'll be amazed at the number of questions you can get right by listening to your instincts. Because you've heard certain phrasing in the past. You may not remember exactly what the rule is or something like that, but like you've heard lots of examples of English throughout your lifetime, and you've read a lot throughout your lifetime. So you know how things need to be phrased. You may not know exactly how or why. That's fine, but you know how things are phrased kind of traditionally, and your gut knows it. So listen to it. Listen to it. Listen to it. We'll practice that too. Francisco, that is it. That's all the rules we need. We covered it in about an hour. All right, welcome back, everybody, to TSI English Language Arts and Reading Crash Course. This is Day 3, Part 2. We just went over the 8 rules you need to know for the TSI Language Arts Writing section, and now we're going to practice applying those rules on a variety of question types. So we're going to go to that TSIA2 document. You guys will have access to this, those of you watching the recording. We're starting with question 20 here. There's some questions before this that require you to kind of read a passage and go over some of the grammar stuff there. And we're going to get to that here in just a minute, but I think it makes more sense to start with the individual questions that are a little bit more point blank, and it's just a little more clear how to apply the rules on these questions. So we're going to start here and then go back to some of those other higher level difficulty questions that require you to read a little bit more. We'll do that later. Okay, so we're kind of going out of number order here, but there's a reason why I'm doing it that way. We just get to practice the rules right now. So the directions for question 20 say, select the best version of the underlined part of the sentence. If you think the original sentence is best, choose the first answer, which would be answer choice A, which is the same as the underlined portion. But Francisco, I want you to just read the sentence right now. So read question 20, if you will, please. And then we'll talk about what rule is being applied and test the answer choices here. So go ahead and start with that, please.
All right. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although they have one of the largest populations of any state in the region.
Interesting. Interesting. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although they have one of the largest populations of any state in that region. A couple things I like to start with when I read a sentence here on this writing section. I like to ask a question. First of all, do you like the sentence as it is right now? Do you like the underlined portion? Do you think it sounds good?
Yes.
Or is there anything weird about that you don't like?
Although they have one of... I mean, there was something I was thinking of, but like...
What do you think? What do you think? Just tell me what you're thinking.
Well, I was thinking like, although it has, but that's not, an answer choice.
Yeah, well, now, why? Hold on. Talk to me. Why do you want to say although it has?
I don't know. Although they have, like, one of the largest... Well, although they have one.
Because I think you're on the right track, amigo.
Oh, no, I just think it sounds better.
That's not an option. Let's do this. Do you think you know the rule that they're testing you on here for number 20? Do you think you know the rule?
Although they have one of the let's see.
And those of you watching the recording as well, see if you can figure out what the rule is. There's a rule I thought when I first read this question. I was like, oh, I know what they're testing me on. And I was like, oh, no, wait, that's not it. It's something else.
I think it's a transition.
That's what I thought, too. That's what I thought, too, at first. But here's what's interesting about this. If it's a transition word question, although... Well, first of all, I think it makes sense why would it be transition, or why it would be a contrast relationship. Right? Because it says Indiana's the smallest state. But then even though Indiana's the smallest state, Indiana's got one of the largest populations, right? Those are contrasting ideas there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's surprising is that, look at all the answer choices. You've got although for A, although for B, but for C and D. All those are contrast. All of them. So there's something else going on here. Right? If you're just thinking, and this is why it's helpful to think in terms of the rules, right? I mean, is that you know, you if you think you're being tested on transition words, should I use although or but? But if you know that it's a contrast relationship, there's got to be something else. They're all contrast. They're all contrast. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's plug in the answer choices. Maybe you can find out what's going on as you plug them in. You've already read A because A is the underlined portion. Plug in B. Let's see how it sounds. Let's hear how it sounds.
Indiana is a small state in the Midwest, although with one of the largest populations of any state in that region.
How's that?
I like that answer.
Okay.
So
let's keep it. Plug in answer choice C.
Indiana is a small state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest populations of any state in the regions.
How's that?
I don't like the but there.
Okay. Let's try D.
Indiana is a small state in the Midwest, but they have one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Well, actually, he is a small state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest. Actually, but has actually sounds.
Do you know what rule they're testing on here?
Contrast, right?
It's not transition words here. I mean, that's an element to this sentence, right? Because there is a contrast transition word, but there's a contrast transition word in all the answer choices. There's if you're not sure what rule it is, here's a great way to test it, is ask yourself, how are the answer choices different? Right? Because if you have like a bunch of different punctuation, clearly they test you on punctuation. Or if you see a bunch of different pronouns, they're probably testing you on pronouns. Or if you see like a bunch of different verb tenses, they're probably testing you on verb tense. Or if different verb forms, it could be subject-verb agreement. And I see a way that these answer choices are different. It may not be obvious to you yet, but I see it. Let me tell you what the rule is. The rule here is you've got to make it match. And you got to make the pronoun match. This is very interesting. A little bit surprising here. It can't be A. I love elimination here. I love elimination on this test. It can't be answer choice A. Because A says they have one of the largest populations of any state. They have. Who's they? Now you might be like, Indiana. No. Indiana. Is Indiana singular or plural, Francisco?
Indiana is singular.
Indiana is singular. You can't refer to Indiana as they. You can't. I know, casually, conversationally, we may do that. It's not acceptable in writing. It's not. And it makes sense, right? Because Indiana is a thing. It is singular. It is a state. Not they is a state. It is a state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just knowing that you can't refer to Indiana as they, it violates the rule of make and match pronouns. It violates that rule. You can't refer to Indiana as they. They is plural. Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
Okay, great. I love it's easier to get rid of the wrong answer choices than to find the right one. It's always easier. So see if you can find one of the answer choices that violates the rules. And we know it's not A, because it says they, and we know it's not D. But they have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Let's read B and C again, and let's see which one, let's just hear which one sounds better.
Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although with one of the largest populations of any state in that region.
How's that sound?
It's tempting, yeah.
It's tempting.
Yeah, to me.
All right, let's try C.
Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Well, actually,
what's better? What's better? I want you to go with your gut here. Go with your gut, Francisco. This is I love going over. I'm not going to tell you exactly which one it is, but I love going through this process because I promise you will find yourself on a question like this, where you're torn between two answer choices. I'm not saying you're gonna be right. I'm not saying your gut's always right. It's not, but it's your best bet. Which one are you drawn toward? One of them is acceptable, and one is not. I'll tell you why it's not in just a minute. Which one are you drawn toward, Francisco? Which one are you drawn toward? Don't listen to your brain. Forget your brain. Your brain's just trying to trick you. Listen to your gut. Which one feels better?
I'm going to say but has.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is correct. Isn't that funny? And I'm not saying it's always right, but it's your best bet. Go with one that feels right. That's an even better way of saying than that sounds right. Feels right. That's language. Although here's the problem with although. You somehow you don't have a complete sentence, a standalone thought with although with. And listen to it. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although with one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Okay, well what about although with one of the largest populations of any state in the region? They don't finish the thought. You could say maybe like, Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, comma, although with one of the largest populations of any state in the region, it is more populated than people think. Okay, that would be fine. You can't end it as it's written. It's not a standalone thought. Do you hear that now? Read it one more time. I think it'll be obvious if you read it again, now that you know to look for that. Read it.
Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest populations.
Yeah, plug in. We know C works, but plug in B. I want you to hear why it's wrong.
Indiana is a small state in the Midwest, although with one of the largest populations of any state in the region.
Maybe you don't hear it. Do you hear why that's off? Why that doesn't stand alone?
Although with one of them populations.
I mean, if you just said, although with one of the largest populations of any state in the region, right? That doesn't stand alone, obviously. And maybe you don't have to know why exactly. I'm not too worried about it right now, but maybe somebody watching the recording can catch it. Maybe not. By the way, I'm always okay with you getting rid of two incorrect answer choices and then going with your best guess, going with your gut on the two that are left. That's all right. That's all right. Right? It's certainly better than just randomly picking, A through D. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're still dramatically increasing your odds of getting the right answer if you can get rid of two bad ones, which you can here if you identify they're testing on make-and-match pronouns. But really, they're also testing you on fragments. You can't go with B because it's a fragment. Yeah. If that's unclear to you, you need to work on that fragment worksheet. You need to do it. You need to do it. Because sometimes a long sentence can be a fragment, too. It's not the length of it that matters. I went to the store is a complete sentence. But if I said, although I went to the store on my birthday, which is the 75th of July during the year 1822, whatever. I mean, whatever. I just realized I probably shouldn't give my real birthday out, so that's why I picked the absurd one. But, the length of the sentence isn't the important part. It's the structure. But C works. Now here, let me show you why C works. because this is subject-verb agreement. Is really, it's argued there's 3 rules going on here. Has is singular, right? Has is singular because it's Indiana is it. So you can say it has, great, but you can't say it have, or here, right? You can say they have, but you don't say it have. It's it has. It's the only one with a singular verb. Do you see that, Francisco?
Yeah, I got you.
That's another way to look at it. That might be the better way to look at it. Subject-verb agreement. Starting there. But, make it match pronouns, it can't be A or D. And then B is just a fragment. C is the only one that matches with subject-verb agreement. It's the only one with a singular verb. Ooh. Any questions about that?
No.
All right. But you see also why you can't just be like, well, B sounds okay. Right? Right? B sounds okay. Okay. It's not good enough here. There's something wrong with 3 answer choices. Your job is to find out what's wrong. Let's do 21. Go ahead and read the question.
The fans in the audience expressed one's appreciation for the performance by giving the lead actor a standing ovation.
Ooh. Well, I think you know what rule is being tested here.
Yeah.
Do you know what rule? What rule is it? You can look at the rules if you need to. And any of you watching the recording, hey, I recommend printing off the rules and having that handy as you're practicing these. Reference them. Don't try to, you don't have it memorized. It's not how you learn them. You learn the rules by practicing them.
Well, there's a pronoun there.
A bunch of pronouns here. Look at the answer choices.
Yeah.
Right? You can guess right now what rule it is.
Let's see. Well, make it match.
Make it match pronouns. We got to pick the right pronoun. Now, what do you think about answer choice A as it is right now? You can read it again if you need to.
The fans in the audience expressed one's appreciation for the performance.
How's answer choice A?
One expressed one's appreciation for the performance. And then the audience expressed one's appreciation.
How's answer choice A? How's it sound?
I give him a lead actors.
How's it sound? You like it?
I don't know really. I mean, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Whose appreciation are we talking about here?
Express one's appreciation.
Whose appreciation are we talking about here? Who or what is expressing their appreciation? Yeah, but the fans.
Oh, I got you.
Oh, okay. The fans.
Yeah, I just had to read that.
Yeah, you got to find out what's going on in the sentence. Whose appreciation? Oh, the fans. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think A is.
No, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, if you're not sure about it, sometimes just plugging them all in will guide you. Okay? So we've already read A, and it's kind of weird. Let's try B, C, and D. Plug in B.
The fans in the audience expressed their appreciation for the performance while giving the lead actor Austin. Yeah.
How's that?
I like that one.
Let's keep it. Try B. Or try C, sorry. It's.
The fan in the audience expressed its appreciation for the performance by giving the lead actor a standing ovation.
How's that?
Nah, I don't think so.
No. Do you see what's wrong with that, by the way?
Yeah, it's like express its appreciation, like almost like they don't know what it is. Like when they say it's
not just that. It's like fans. Here, is fans singular or plural?
Plural.
It's plural. Multiple fans. Its is a singular possessive pronoun. Singular. Right?
Yeah, I see
So that doesn't match. It's got to match the fans, which is plural. Let's make it match pronouns. C is gone. And by the way, it's the same problem with A.
Yeah, A is singular too, isn't it?
A is singular too. One's is singular. You might be like, there's an S at the end. Well, it's singular. It's a possessive pronoun. Right. This is Francisco's room, right? If we're talking about your room, Francisco's room with an S, but it's not. There's multiple Franciscos. It's your room. It's possessive. Anyway, one's is singular. By the way, is there singular or plural?
There's plural.
There's plural, right? It's a possessive form of they, just like fans is plural. So it makes sense why it sounds all right. Try your. Let's plug that in.
The fans in the audience expressed your appreciation for the performance by giving the lead actor a standing ovation.
How's that? No, definitely not. Now, if it said, you can express your appreciation for the performance by giving the lead actor a standing ovation. Okay, great. But it's not you, it's the fans, and it's got to be they, or possessive form of they, which is there. Answer choice B. And it sounds the best. It sounds the best. A lot of times you're going to read the right answer choice, you'll be like, okay, keep it, right? But you got to find what's wrong with 3 of the answer choices. Does it make sense what's wrong with A and C and D? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's keep going. 22.
Charleston, South Carolina, is a popular city for tourists with their historical sites and beautiful weather.
Interesting. Now here, the sentence structure is interesting. There's a descriptive phrase here, with their historical sites and beautiful weather, right? Which is referring to the popular city, right? It's a popular city for tourists. It's not referring to the tourists, it's referring to the popular city for tourists. Yeah. Charleston, it's essentially referring to Charleston, South Carolina. Okay. So, boy, it's not obvious what's being tested here. You might think it could be misplaced modifiers in a sense, but because we have a modifying phrase. Let's just plug in the answer choices here if it's not obvious, right? It's not pronouns, it's not punctuation, it's not super obvious what's going on here. Let's plug them in. What do you think about answer choice A, by the way? And you can read it again if you need to.
I don't think it works.
Why not?
Because when it says with their historical sites and the beautiful weather, for one thing, it's plural. For another thing, it says it's next to the tourists. Like the tourists have historical sites.
Yeah, but here's what's tricky about that is that for tourists it's called a prepositional phrase. They don't really test on it a whole lot. It's a prepositional phrase describing the popular city. So that's really one idea, a popular city for tourists. So it is right next to a popular city.
Okay.
A popular city for tourists, right? So technically it works. It's confusing why it works. Don't worry about that right now. They're not going to test you on that. Prepositions don't pop up in the TSI. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
But the bigger issue is the one you pointed out, which is there. Why is that a problem?
It's plural.
It's plural. I mean, singular here, Charleston, South Carolina, or popular city, whatever. They're both singular. Plug in the others. Let me hear them.
Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists with its historical sites and beautiful weather.
How's that?
I like that one.
Sounds all right. Try C.
Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists. It has historical sites and beautiful weather.
How's that?
It just doesn't sound right to me.
Okay. Let's get rid of A for sure. Why? Do you know why you want to get rid of C? I'm not saying it's right, by the way. Do you know why?
Well, South Carolina is a popular city. It has. I don't know, it just doesn't sound really right to me.
Before we get rid of it, I agree with you. I don't like it. I think it's wrong. I'm going to explain why in just a minute. But if you can't tell me why it's wrong, let's keep it for right now. And see if we can get rid of some of the others. Going to read D.
Okay. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists because of their historical sites and beautiful weather.
How's that?
Well, again,
that's the issue, right? I mean, that's just, you can't do it. Boy, that's like 3 in a row. We're getting the pronouns to match. Plays a role. They like that. They really like testing that, man. Do you see why just knowing that rule is going to give you a big edge on this test?
Yeah, I got you.
Big time. They love testing it. Let's talk about answer choice C now. Now, you didn't like it. I agree. I don't like it either, but I know why it's wrong. Let me tell you what rule applies for C. C is the comma rule. You can't use a comma to separate two standalone thoughts.
Oh.
And if you plug in C, and this is cool because this is why it sounded weird. It's why you didn't like it. You just didn't know why. The first half stands alone. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists. Period. It stands alone.
Or you could use a semicolon.
Or you could use a semicolon. I love it. I was just going to say that. I love it.
Yeah.
Man, you're learning these rules fast, man. Absolutely. You could use a semicolon there too, because it's for standalone thoughts. But the second half stands alone as well. It has historical sites and beautiful weather. They both stand alone. You can't separate those with a comma. No dice. You can't do that. So C is gone. But I love the fact that you're like, I don't like it. You didn't know why. Right? But your gut's like, nah, something wrong there. Couldn't even tell me what it was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But somewhere you knew. And then B sounds great. But again, when you read B, you're not like, that's it for sure, right? It's like, well, I don't see anything wrong. Sounds good. Keep it. Okay, great. But then, I mean, to really be confident in your choice, you should be able to find the thing that is wrong with the other three answer choices.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Francisco?
Yes.
By the way, is this different from how you've been approaching it on other questions you've done on your own previously?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. This is the way to do it.
All right. What's up, guys? This is Mr. Toohey again. If you want more answer explanations from all of the TSI Writing Practice tests, just click the link in the description below, get access to the full course. Nobody makes it easier for you to pass this test. And remember, when you access the full course, you get all of my videos on the reading section, the writing section, and the essay section of the TSI, along with all the problem sets you need and all the resources you need to pass the test. So click the link in the description below, get access to the full course, pass the TSI English Language Arts and Reading test. Thanks, guys.